Oh, why'd you do that? That's not what I want to do. Got it.
We need to put mute buttons on.
I don't have a mute.
If you hover over your screen, you'll see a little blue box in the upper right corner with 3 dots. You should be able to mute that way.
Okay, everybody, we are live on Facebook. Hello, Leisure Town Life people. Thank you for joining us. We still have some people joining us here on Zoom who will be part of the Q&A panel for our guest author this evening. So while everybody is logging in slowly, forgive us for any technical difficulties, but we are live and you're getting it as it is. So tonight we would like to welcome author Wendy Menara. She's the author of Silence of Shame. It's a powerful, powerful, powerful book on a child caring for her bedridden mother. And many, many experiences go into that. So tonight what we hope to do is have her break down a little bit about the story, about her experiences, what prompted her to write her story and share this with us in hopes of, possibly influencing other people to share their stories and, help others in the caregiving community. The format is going to be a little bit different. It's not like a book club format because some people have read the book, some haven't. So it's going to be kind of fun. So what we're going to do, Wendy and I are going to kind of do a Q&A together. And she's going to lead us through the book in little snippets to kind of give you an idea of how the story unfolds. And then at the end, we'll allow a chance for Q&A with some of our participants. So it's going to be very, very fun. But for those of you who don't know about Silence of Shame, it's Wendy's story about a child caring for her bedridden mother. It's powerful, it's moving. Her mother was just an amazing, curious figure. But if we break it down just real quick. So Wendy is the second to the youngest of 10 kids. Her parents divorced before she was born. At the age of 4, her mother was afflicted with MS. Between the age of 4 and 13, Wendy and her siblings were the primary caregivers to her mother. It was a very different time. So they didn't have a lot of support from services and agencies. Your mother was abusive, plain and simple. She was troubled and she had to wrestle with a lot of her demons. And as the story unfolds, we start to learn more about her mother and what caused some of that behavior, but it certainly had an impact directly on the kids and everyone around them. It's amazing that as abusive as your mother was, you never stopped loving her. So it really is a testament to the power of love a child has for a parent, and it's almost unconditional to a certain extent. Only after your mother's death did you discover there were really damaging secrets and hidden identities that would forever change your world. And that's kind of where we're going to lead you all. So we will be doing a Q&A between the two of us, and then we'll open it up for live Q&A at the end, and any other questions or any other ways you'd like to engage with Wendy moving forward. So Wendy, welcome.
Thank you, Paula. I appreciate this opportunity. Thank you for the invite to Storyphiles.
Absolutely. And you've got some of your fans here. I can see.
Well, I would call them friends, no family yet. My sister's doing Facebook Live, but definitely friends and colleagues. So thank you all for definitely.
Okay, wonderful. And I noticed that there are a couple of your childhood friends here too that are actually mentioned in the story. So it's really exciting. And then one of your sisters actually is attending on Facebook Live. So we're going to learn quite a bit from you. So let's just kind of start to unpack it a little bit. What prompted you to go through this journey of writing and telling your story, especially a story that is incredibly emotional and painful in areas? What did that writing process look like, and how did that impact you?
It took a while to, I'm a writer, have many stories, written a lot of fiction, screenplays, stage plays for the most part. And after I moved into my new house, I did the remodel, I settled, I had my dog. I'm like, okay, what story should I focus on next? And so I went through my, my little writing folder, and I decided, I think I need to write my memoir. I need to write, because I had that as one of the stories of my childhood. I knew there was something different and unique about it. So I just said, I'm going to focus on that. So that's kind of how I prompted. And once I decide I'm going to write a story, I just kind of go for it. I do it. So most memoirs can take a while, but I was able to finish mine in less than 2 years. So I kind of plowed through. I think I lost your audio.
You're on.
There we are. How did that impact you when you were going through the writing process? Did it, I mean, obviously you must have had to relive a lot of moments. I mean, just in our discussions privately, it's been very emotional.
When never talked about any of this as a kid, as my friends Andy and Mary Lou and Susan can attest, even Debbie, who's known me for a long time. I just never talked about it. So when I moved to California, I really pulled away, sad to say, from friends and family. So during that time, I did a lot of soul searching. I did a lot of hypnotherapy, a lot of meditation and whatnot. And that helped me to kind of process on my own. And that took years. It took years to do that. And so when I wrote the book, I thought, I'm good. I'm going to get myself an editor. I've got a few beta readers. So by the time when I actually started putting pen to paper, and you actually, because it's one thing when it's sitting in your head, when you got to actually get those words on the paper, it really forces you to focus, number one, because you have to think of what your readers need to, but it also it dug up a lot of stuff. I really had to look at the abuse. My editor, all my friends kept saying, you have to put the word abuse. I mean, I resisted it. I did not want to say my mother was abusive. Up until just a year ago. I mean, Sherry was kind of with me. She was, Wendy, you've got to put the word abuse in there because your mother was abusive. And Debbie said the same thing. So just through the writing of it, it just made me look at my mother differently. Still love her, but there was painful moments, definitely, for sure. So it was a process, but I just, like I said, I just focused and hunkered down and said, I'm just getting this thing written. So.
That's amazing. There's so much to unpack here, and we're going to try to do as much as we can in the hour. But again, this started at a very early age for you. You were the second to the youngest of 10 kids, and there were 6 living in your home with your mother, and then the others were with your father. When your mom found out that she would have to spend prolonged periods of time in the hospital, you and your younger brother were sent to your grandparents to be cared for. And that was just a magical part of the story, because to me, I saw it as almost like just a little bit of a break, a little bit of a break, a little bit of brightness. And they were both amazing people, but in particular, your grandmother, you were very close to her, and you almost had a spiritual connection in some way. Can you speak a little bit about what that time was like for you and your brother, and some special memories that you had written about in the story?
I think, yeah, you're right. It was very magical for me. There was with my grandfather playing horsey, and it was funny because I was obviously still young. I knew something was wrong with my mother, but I had connected, like you said, I had a spiritual connection with my grandmother particularly. So it was just a house full of memories and love. And I felt like I could be a little kid. Like, well, I look at it now, I was being taken care of. You know, I was still kind of being nurtured and cared for up until about 4 years old. And then of course the roles reversed once we went to go live with our mother. But so I cherished those times with her for sure. And my grandfather.
I'd like to read an excerpt from the chapter, Where Did She Go? And I'm going to read two different parts of this, but I think this is very important because it speaks to, again, what you were exposed to as a very young child, and the resilience you must have had to have through these times. But those golden moments passed. One evening, I peered into the bathroom and saw my invincible grandmother hunched over the bathtub. I didn't understand what she was doing, or why she was making that loud, gagging sound. She sluggishly turned to me and managed that kind of smile of hers. She jolted her head towards the tub and shooed me away, but I didn't move. I stood there, fixated on my grandmother's body and what looked to me like silver beads spewing out of her mouth. As an adult, I learned that this silvery substance was attributed to kidney failure. She stood up and stumbled into the bedroom. I cautiously approached the tub and peered over the side. It was filled with silvery, gooey, bead-like substance. Even at 4 years of age, I knew something was wrong. I found myself repeating, where is she? Where'd she go? Growing increasingly agitated, my 4-year-old body began to tremble. Then a high-pitched, ear-piercing sound overwhelmed me. My eyes riveted on a drinking glass where all of a sudden the glass toppled over and rolled next to the soap dish. The thing is, I wasn't touching it. I was directing the item's movement from my mind. As I continued in this spellbound trace, a few dishes fell into the sink. I felt hot and the room was spinning. No longer chanting, where did she go? I now zeroed in on the bottom drawer of the stove. The more I stared, the more anger built up inside of me. Then all of a sudden, the bottom drawer of the stove popped open. A few pots and pans flew out and smashed into the fridge. Aunt Ruthie rushed into the kitchen. Her eyes were wide with fear. I peered up helplessly at my aunt while Mama was yelling from the next room. I knew I was causing this commotion, but I couldn't stop it. You want to tell us a little bit about what that was? That was after your grandmother's funeral, correct?
Yes. That was my first psychic experience. I didn't know what it was. It is known as telekinesis. I did learn. What I've learned since studying stuff about, psychic and energy, is that now looking at it, I was so angry at her death, that energy just built up, and like I had a Carrie moment, like I joke in the book. There was no blood or anything, but in this case, I was literally, it was such a vivid experience. I mean, things were just flying across the room, and it was chaos. And as soon as my Aunt Ruthie put her hands on my shoulder, it pretty essentially grounded me, and it allowed me to kind of it was essentially an out-of-body experience, right? And we've all had those, I'm sure, in different ways. But for me, it was so pronounced. I was so young, and I think the death triggered it. And I also had something similar when my mother died. And I noticed, I think because I was surrounded by death a lot as a child, my grandmother went quick. My mother prepared us for her death, but regardless, both events were traumatizing for me. So I think what happened is I just kind of got aware of the other side, the other world at a young age. And I don't talk about it a lot in interviews and stuff, but I think it's something that I'm sure other children and people have dealt with, kind of going through a traumatizing experience, and you have an out-of-body experience essentially. And with my grandmother, what was really cool with her is after that traumatic experience, I would have these moments with her where she would actually visit me. And I always knew she was going to visit because I'd get this really high pitched ringing in my ears. And at first it scared me. I didn't know, because like her vision or her presence would come into the room and I would actually physically see her. We would have a conversation of sorts. And it was, it's like you see in the movies. It was just definitely like that. It was very real for me. I didn't question it. And it was a very warm presence. It was very heavenly. And then eventually those experiences went away. But those were, I think, because I was so connected to my grandmother and such, like you said, a spiritual connection, that we, even after she passed over onto the other side, I was still able to have that spiritual connection with her as a child. So it was, it's amazing what death can do to a person, especially as a child. It really kind of opens you up to things. So those are my experiences.
It does. And they were your maternal grandparents, correct?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you kind of expand a little bit, just give us a broader picture of your mother and how she was from the time you were 4 to 13? You know, what was happening to her body? What was her general behavior like? And I think that will help kind of set the stage for the rest of the story that we're going to delve into. But tell us about Shirley.
Yes, she I never knew her to walk. She was always in a bed. I mean, I have one memory and I talk about that in the book. She was in her walker, but I always knew her. I felt sorry for her. Again, as a child, you look at your parent in such a different way, but I felt sorry for her. She was very firm. I just didn't like seeing her in pain. That was tough for me as a child. Just, you know, we took care of her. She was completely bedridden. We gave her the bedpan. We just, you know, we did everything for her. You don't want to see your mother in pain. That's someone you love. So that was tough. So writing the book, I really kept those child eyes on. I didn't want to look at it as an adult, how I would look at her as an adult if, you know, I was caregiving for her, but I was conflicted. I didn't know what to do, what I could do to heal her, make her better. So that's, and I talk about in the first chapter how she never saw her out of bed. And right near her death, of course, we didn't know she was going to die, but she was able to go to Minneapolis, and the doctor said they had some new kind of, you know, therapeutic, you know, things they could provide my mother. And so we went to Minneapolis, took the trip, and they couldn't help the MS, you know, they thought they could, but they gave her a bunch of drugs and they gave her a wheelchair. And so I remember that was really kind of the impetus for this book as well, is when to see a person you love immobile in a bed for your whole childhood, and then to see her get out of that bed. And I still remember when they lifted her up and put her in the wheelchair, and my mother too. I mean, it's so those core moments, I guess, any child has with their parents, but to see her in that wheelchair and just see the whole room lit up, her eyes, because she was a sad woman. She had moments of laughter, but for the most part, she was in a lot of pain in her life. But this was one moment where there was hope. I mean, literally hope coming from her. And it just imprinted on my soul. So, and right after that, within a year, 6 months or so, she died. So, but I was able to see this woman who was kind of beaten and broken and had her dark moments, and then full of hope, and then she was gone. So that was kind of my childhood self and how I saw her. Yeah.
Thank you. The next area I want to kind of focus on, because there's so much to talk about, more than what we can possibly do in an hour, but fear. Fear came into your life at a very early age, and with your siblings as well. So, you know, it's worth noting that her siblings were very involved with this in different levels, and we're going to have her kind of get us updated on what's happening with them right now and how they ended up coping. But I'm going to read something from the Family Shuffle chapter, and then open it up to Wendy to speak a little bit more about. She writes, Fear was instilled in me at an early age, both in school and at home at times. Mama would be merciless. She managed to control us and devise techniques to discipline us from the confines of her bed. You want to expand on that a little bit?
I remember once I was talking to a friend, and I never, like I said, I never really talked outside my close friends like Andy, and everyone. They knew my mom. They saw her, in her bedridden state and stuff. But after I moved to California, I never really talked about it. A little bit here and there. But someone asked me, she goes, well, how did she discipline you? How did she control you guys? She goes, oh, I could never do that. I can't imagine as a parent. No, I'm not a parent, but trust me, parents have their ways of controlling their children. If your parents here, you know how you can do that. And I think my mother, because she was bedridden, she really had to use the mental manipulation, if she will. And she used it well. Yeah, she did. She was able to, I talk about it in the book where, my sister, Debbie, was more of, I'll take the three sisters. There's three of us. Debbie was my older sister. Love her to pieces. Debbie, if you're on Facebook Live, I love you. And Madeline was the middle, and then there was me. So my mom, Debbie was a fighter. She was spunky. She would fight back with my mom. And where me, I would freeze. I would surrender. I would just kind of go hide. But Madeline, not so much. Madeline was the person my mother could control. And so she would have her, mental, it's amazing how people can control people mentally. I think that's another thing from childhood. I was like, how is it that my mother on the bed over there could control my sister over here and beat the shit, I'm sorry to say, my brother? How do you do that? But people do it. They control you mentally. And I saw that as a kid. And I think that fascinated me too. And I kind of talked about it in the book, but it happened, so I lived in fear. And I remember seeing one time in school, I went to a central school, and there was kind of a sadistic, Head Start teacher there at the time. We called it Head Start. And, I just remember picking up the kid literally by his ears, and his little feet were dangling off. So I learned I have to be a good girl. I don't want pain. I don't want to be beat up. So I'm going to be the good girl. So that's kind of how I was controlled, and how I kind of went into my adulthood.
Interesting. Further on in that chapter, you write about a specific punishment that your mom imposed on you. And it's really quite amazing. Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
It's funny you bring that episode up. I commute a lot from work and my day job and stuff. And I was thinking about that episode. And again, parents have to discipline children. Now, I'm not sure this happens in every household, but my mother had ways of breaking us. And this particular episode, she broke me. I mean, she literally broke me. And how it happened, meaning I remember it was almost like a psychotic experience, if you will. So what happened, I did something bad. I don't know what I did. I was misbehaving. So she ignored me. It would be like, if you were asking me a question, I would just go, and she was smoking her cigarette. And I kept saying, Mama, and she just kept smirking. And then I go, Mom, and then she'd smirk at me like she knew what she was doing. I started crying. I was pounding my feet. I got throwing myself on the bed. I go, whatever it did, I'm sorry. And she just ignored me the whole night. But whatever it did, it broke. And I was a changed girl after that experience, let me say. So yeah, there was a lot of fear. I don't know if other listeners or people are thinking about writing your book, or other children have went through this, but it's tough. I mean, there's children who went through a lot worse than I did as a kid. And somehow we survive. Somehow we make it through. I don't know, but that was her technique worked on me. Let's just put it that way.
Interesting.
Ignore them and they will buckle. Ignore them and they will fold and surrender.
I think that
laugh at it now, kind of.
Now there's some people you would hope that they would just ignore you, I'm sure. In some ways that could be a benefit. Give us an overview of what it looked like. Now you tell us in the story, anyone who has read the book, you kind of go in and out of the duties and the tasks that you and your siblings had in caring for your mother. The green couch is pivotal throughout the story. The TV tray, her bottles of pills and everything else. But you had your jobs. What did a typical day look like in and out of school or whatever, and caring for your mom?
Her needs came first and foremost. And it was funny, today I was at work and I was realizing, why do I get so anxious? As soon as an email comes, I've got to jump and I've got to dump. So I constantly processing. It's like in the middle of the night, she goes, I need my bedpan, and I'd be like, and start get so it was 24/7, pretty much like that. So I think I'm hardwired that way, even now as an adult, unfortunately. I guess in some ways that can be good, but so 24/7 at nighttime, she would need to go to the bathroom and give her the bedpan. But for the most part, wake up, give her the bedpan, get her food, breakfast, bathe her, wash her hair. We all had our chores in the house. Mine was the bathroom. I can clean a good toilet bowl, trust me. I just have no problem cleaning that. But that was my chore. And everyone had their chores around the house. But for the most part, the girls, me, Madeline, and Debbie, she felt self-conscious when Greg, my brother, or Kelly, those were the two that were living there. She didn't like to ask them, and she would get mad at us because, girls, it's up to you to take care of me. I can't ask your brother. So it was hard for them. So for the most part, for bathing and the bedpan, she relied on the girls for the most part. Yeah, which makes sense. Yeah.
Interesting. So we're weaving in and out of this story. And again, I'm speaking to most of you who haven't read the book. So we're doing this a little bit different. But as we go through this story, there's a lot of darkness and unnecessary darkness for a child or children in general, or people. But there's also some moments of light, and just little moments of light. And one of the things that hit me as you go through is when you talk about visiting your friends, early on, how you notice that you're different. How it was interesting when you brought a new friend over to the house for the first time, and the friend was overly curious about your mom and what was your life like, and this and that and the other thing, and your mom was very uncomfortable, and that just created a whole situation. But there is some brightness in this story throughout, and we're going to touch on that as we go. But I wanted to read something from her chapter. I called her Mama. I cherished my school friends. Not only were they fun to be around, but I felt safe with them. In my younger years, I was overly excited every time I got to play at Susan Bishop's house. It was a massive brown house. I felt like I could get lost in it for days, and when we played hide and seek. Andy, Kuula, Anita Simmons, Fran Balduc, Wanda, and Jean were among my closest friends. I got a thrill out of visiting their houses too. My friends' parents were kind and welcomed me with open arms. It was odd yet comforting to observe mothers who greeted us at the door or cooked a meal. I marveled at this. They consistently made me feel special. There were moments I secretly wished that their mother could be my mother. So I'm going to give away a little secret. We have a couple of those childhood friends with us tonight. Andy Kuula, and then we did have Susan Bishop. She's not on camera, but she is here with us as well. Wendy, is there anyone else?
Mary Lou.
Mary Lou.
Looks like
Fantastic. So do you want to share do you feel comfortable, folks, sharing some of your stories of Wendy growing up and how you all rallied around to support her and her brothers and sisters?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you, Andy.
Okay.
Hi, Andy.
Okay, good. I'm on my phone.
I just want to say real
Did
quick,
you-
Andy, I'm going to just interrupt real quick. I just recently was able to go back to the Midwest and reconnect. It was kind of the most heavenly trip, but I reconnected with family and friends. Andy's mother, Kay, I walked into their house. I felt like I was 14 again. The house is the same. I mean, well, it's, but Kay was as warm and as loving as I can remember. And Andy, just gracious. So those memories that I had from my childhood with Andy and Kay and his whole family. I mean, boy, talk about, yeah, it was, I'm blessed. Thank you, Andy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Growing up with Wendy and her brother Greg, they were my two best friends. We were kind of like the three musketeers growing up and sharing life and experiences and not knowing anything about anything. And it was very different when I got to really know the inner workings of the Menara family and going into that house and meeting Shirley and being intimidated and scared of her because she was so different from my mom or any other moms I'd seen. So I didn't really know what to do. So we would just scamper off to their bedrooms and play and do our things, or spin our rifles and spin our flags. But it was life forming because, how many 50 years later, I consider Wendy one of the closest people in my life. I mean, it's years can separate you, but those bonds that you form when you're kids like that and going through the things we did and what they went through, what I only found out recently, everything that they went through, it's amazing and life-changing.
Love you, Andy.
I love you, honey.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? I know some people may be muted. That's okay.
Okay.
That's good.
I want to speak. Wendy and I, we went to elementary school together.
Oh, Pam, I'm sorry. Hello.
Hey.
Jeez. Hello. Yeah, I just kept seeing Ken. I'm like, it's Pam. It's like, oh my God, yes.
But I remember, going to your house a couple times and seeing your mom, and I never knew anything, I mean, growing up in Michigan, we all had problems, right? We all had parent problems or whatever, and until I read your book, I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe, how are you such a great adult and not, like, I'm serious, not, in some psycho ward or something, or, just, you're just a great adult. And the book was absolutely just breathtaking. And I cried, I laughed, I remembered things, that, from, you went to Catholic school and I went to Central.
Mm-hmm.
But, how are you such, like, I just lost my dad and we had a very mental abusive relationship, right?
Oh.
And so how do you get through it? How do you get through the days where you just, you think that, you're just going to lose it completely, but you don't, you just are such a great person.
Oh, I think we
And
all
your
have
whole
this.
family's like that,
I'm sorry that you lost your dad, but it's tough that he was mentally abusive. It's like that catch-22. I love him, but oh my God, I'm kind of glad you're gone. It's because it's tough.
It's true.
Yeah.
I mean, I begged for his love, his affection, his attention, just like with your mom, you
Mhm.
love your mom with all your heart,
Mhm.
but you still have that inside going,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
why weren't you different? Why didn't you love me? What could I have done to make you love me?
One thing can I share with you real quick, Pam? And I wrote this as the Khalil Gibran said, we choose our joys and sorrows long before we experience them. When I read that, this is my journey now. It's not true for everyone, but I had to realize as a soul and as a spirit, somehow I had life lessons with my mother. And with everyone I meet along the way, we all do. But with my mother in particular, it's like she helped me get here, number one, right? But then beyond that, it was like, one thing I learned from her is I do not take my health for granted. I never have. I realized how precious our bodies are, how just seeing her not being able to walk, the simple things, feed herself, drink something. So I focus on that. I focus on what the good I learned from her, knowing that the pain and everything, it will get neutralized by all the love, if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
I kind of constantly have to refocus my mind and my head. Does
Right.
that, yeah, that's kind of
Right.
what I do for myself. So I
But
hope
don't you
that,
get angry? I mean, don't you get so damn mad that, that you had to live your childhood like that? Or is it just kind of,
I think because I had friends like uh, how many siblings did you have?
my brother and my sister.
See, I had a big family.
Yeah, you had a huge family, right?
There was that, so that helped. I wasn't the, well, I guess I did get abused, but it wasn't the brunt of this real physical abuse my brother Kelly went through. But I
Yeah.
have to admit, I wrote about in the book, my childhood escape was, I loved drum and bugle corps. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, I know you
that
did.
was,
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
drum corps is my saving grace. Once I found that, that was my focus. And Andy,
Amen.
amen. It just, and then it is, I mean, it just opened
Yes.
up a whole world for me. And I realized
Mhm.
being at Andy's house, visiting my friend's house, Susan and stuff, and Mary Lou and Jean and everyone, I realized, oh, there's a life beyond here. So I kept my focus seeing what was working around me. So I didn't have a chance to focus so much on the anger. And not that I wasn't angry, and maybe I'm still working through that anger, who knows? But I think for the most part, I got it figured out for myself. But I say be gentle on yourself. Let yourself grieve, have that anger. Don't, whatever you do not squish it. Let it come out in healthy. You can find ways to manage and cope with it, for sure.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Mary
And
Lou.
I'm glad you're all here.
Mary Lou wants to say something, I think.
Oh,
Wendy, when I read the book, I was so excited when it came in. And when I saw your first page of you, Madeline, and Greg, I cried. I absolutely cried. It was people that I knew looking in a book. And then reading your story, I felt guilty. Even after sitting, behind you for how many years in school, I never knew what was going on. And of course, afterwards, I don't know how you did it, and I wish there was something I could do. And that's what I kept thinking of in the book is, oh my gosh, how did she do this? And just got me to know you better through the book. And of course, seeing you recently, love you to death, dear.
Love you, girl. You know it.
It was wonderful to see you again. And you have turned out to be amazing, regardless what you went through.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
absolutely. So we're gonna, we got a message from Sherry. I agree, Susan, she's a pretty awesome person. We're getting a lot of little messages popping up. We're gonna kind of ease right into kind of the end of the story a little bit and introduce a couple of more people in Wendy's life. Wendy, I'm gonna read an excerpt from the Bessemer brothers, and it's about your dad and your mom, and we haven't spoken a lot about him, but that will come out later, and there's definitely a lot in the book that really honors him. What I remember most about the visit was the look of both sadness and disdain between my dad and mother. It was as if there were stories between them that only they shared. He knew her from another time, back when she was vibrant and full of life. And here she was now, a broken woman tethered to a green couch. Pity overrode animosity. I could tell she was embarrassed. She appeared relieved when he left. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Divorced parent. One thing through, when I moved to California, I ended up working at an elementary school, and there was divorced parents who'd come through, and I remember one that helped me process it. I'm going to tell the story real quick, and then kind of ties into, I think, my mother, dad. It was a nasty divorce case. They had 2 kids in the school, and I remember she walked out of the door, and I still see her standing in the doorway. She goes, "I'm going to get him. I'm going to take him down, and I'm going to use his children to get back at him." And she said it with such disdain, such anger, such. And I just remember she walked out, and I just remember I sat down because I worked administrative, and I sat down and went, wow, that was kind of like relationship with my mom and my dad. So it kind of helped me realize that, we weren't alone, that there's a lot of ugly divorce cases and stuff. So, because my mom always talked bad about him, she never said anything good about him. So when he came in, he'd come and go, and it was kind of like a typical divorce. I should say typical, but a lot of divorces are nasty like that. So that's what we experienced. It wasn't until after her death, when he did come to live with us, and I talk about it in the book, that I realized, oh, there's so much more to this story. There's so much more. And it was like, wow. And wow, what a man. What a man. He's an angel. And yeah, that's all I can say about him. He's a good guy.
You talking about Louis right now?
Yeah, Louis. Yeah, my dad.
Yeah. Okay.
No,
Yeah.
about her dad.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're talking about your dad.
I'm
Not
talking about my dad now. Yeah,
But good thing you brought that up, Andy, because Louis next.
Yeah.
Louis Jr. Right, I should say there's
Yeah.
Louis Senior, Louis Jr. Yeah.
Yeah, so Louis Jr., I'm going to read another excerpt. Of all my 7 brothers, Louis was the most mysterious to me. Born in 1949, he was 14 years older than I was. Mama frequently spoke so affectionately of him and was proud of the young man he had become. He, like all of my brothers, was good looking. He had the same dark brown hair like our other brothers, and soothing brown eyes were hidden behind his glasses. His picture hung in our living room wall, close to the sizable black frame painting of wild horses running in a vast barren landscape overshadowed by ominous clouds. Every now and again, Mama pointed to Louis' photo and reminded us how smart our older brother was, and she hoped that we grew up to be as bright as him. Tell us about Louis.
He was mysterious. As people will discover, for those who've read the book, they know the secrets. For those who don't, you read the book, you'll find out. But my brother Louis knew my mother at a different time when she was walking. He was but I always felt there was something more to him, and I just was always intrigued, and I didn't know why, but I did look up to him. I knew my mother really looked up to him, really loved him. So I just felt like I wanted to be like him when I was, when I was older and stuff. So I just, he's got the Italian stoic nature about him. So he keeps things close to the vest, much like Louis Senior did. But Louis just, I was so happy to reconnect with him. He's just got a heart of gold, and it's just such a great guy. But yeah, he got out of the house. He joined the army and served in Vietnam, but he had to get out of the house, and probably, right after what he went through as a kid, there's a lot going on there too. He could write his own book. So he just got out. And so I didn't see him a lot, but when I did see him, I just loved him, just loved having him around.
Thank you. I'm so glad you were able to reconnect with him. That is just very special. So for those of you that read the book, you know that there are 3 secrets that are really uncovered after Shirley's death. And they're life-changing, actually. For those of you who haven't read the book, I'm just going to read a little excerpt and then turn it over to Wendy to kind of give an overview of what those secrets look like. And then we're going to turn it over to just basic Q&A for anybody that would like to ask some questions. But this is really important because in the storytelling arena, we oftentimes have discussions about what should be shared and what shouldn't be shared. There are secrets in our family history, in our history. And are those our stories or secrets to tell? And if we do tell them, how are they going to impact others? What are we hoping telling those secrets will do? And that was something Wendy and I were discussing earlier about, the struggle. Do we share these secrets? At that time, in history, certain things were taboo. Certain things weren't done. Today, it's very different in many respects, but still the same. They are family secrets. So Wendy has beautifully expressed these in a very honorable and respectful way, I think. But I'd like to just read a little start of the 3 secrets that have been discovered. As devastated as I was by the death of my mother, Nothing could have prepared me for the scandals that were revealed shortly after my mother's body was buried deep in the ground and her spirit was unencumbered on the other side. Perhaps this is the core reason that I wrote this memoir, to unleash the shackles of shame that held my mother in her unholy mental bondage while on earth. Times were different then, compared to the present time while writing this book, but shame is shame, and shame runs deep. People's secrets can go with them to their graves, never making peace or finding the healing for which they deeply yearn while embodied. The guilt-ridden scars of regret, shame, and remorse lay hidden in darkened closets awaiting their discovery, at last freeing the burdened soul. And it's perfect. Wendy, would you like to explain a little bit about the secrets that were uncovered and how they impacted your lives?
I don't know if Debbie's on right now, but we've talked about this. And I wonder, as you're reading, I'm starting to think, I wonder if it's because I lost my mother at a young age. God, I just sometimes if she was alive, I could talk to her as an adult, and I never had that chance. So this was the only way I could talk to her. This is the only I could just, Mom, you know what? Huh? But like you said, times were different. There was, stuff she went through as a kid. And I talked one of the secrets there, with the that, I mean, I'll just share that one particular, was that, she as a child was swapped between sisters. One sister was kind of a wild child, if you will, and she ended up saying, she born out of wedlock, which back in 1931 was a big taboo. And so they said, here, take her. And they did. They just swapped her, the other sister. So we grew up thinking our grandmother was our grandmother, when in fact that was really our aunt. And it was totally. So my mother lived with that shame. My mother lived with that shame too. So I think her not being able to talk about that, carrying those scars, because I taught. There's a chapter in there where she taught. I don't know if she ever shared this with Debbie or anyone, but she clearly told me she was called a bastard when she was a child. And I think that really scarred her. That was a big thing back then, to be called a bastard child, because that meant she was born out of wedlock and that. So she lived with that kind of shame and that stigma. And I think that carried through her. And then the thing with writing the book is, and one thing I learned from my brother Kelly is like where my mother was, she perpetuated a lot of them. By not sharing her secrets, by feeling ashamed of who she was, it came out in all these ugly ways in her life. What was remarkable, particularly about my brother Kelly, is he could have perpetuated his abuse, but he didn't. He broke that cycle. And so I think in every family, I say, you tell those secrets. If you got something you want to, you tell that kid, because those kids, they're intuitive enough. They know something's going on. They might not know the words or put their finger on it, but they know. So share. You don't have to give them the whole dissertation and the college version, but share those secrets, share that stuff with them. So writing the book helped me explore that, talk about it, but also realize that unlike my mother, who was unable to break that kind of abuse, my brother Kelly was a great example that he did. And I think a lot of our family did too. We were able to somehow kind of override it and stuff. So yeah, so secrets suck. Get those secrets out of the closet, bring them out, air them out, put some light on them. So that's in my opinion.
Well, it's therapeutic and healthy for the soul and for the psyche, I think, to be able to speak to people and definitely get it out.
Yeah.
I'm going to open up about 5 minutes for just any questions that anyone might have for Wendy.
Go, Mary Lou.
No, Andy, you go first. I do have to say,
I don't know
though,
if I have any questions, but
Comment?
I just can't express how blown away and proud I am of what you've accomplished. And I'm so glad that you were brave enough to go on this journey and work through all of this, because you know, it's not done here. It's a lifetime thing that you just kind of keep sorting through and finding more clarity as you go. But good for you for kind of getting the skeletons out of the closet, and it brought your siblings, all the rest of them that are still here, together again a couple of months ago. And I think that is amazing. And it was so great to see them all in one place, and it just made my heart sing. But anyway, that's no questions, but just pride and joy.
Can I say one thing about that real quick? My brother Kelly talk about it. There's a chapter dedicated to the abuse he went through, but he went through it his whole childhood. He never shared that with anyone. He was fostered after I moved to California. He had 1 year left in high school. He ended up, getting himself in some trouble and whatever, but, just a typical kid. But he ended up being fostered out. There's too much about that, but his foster parents had no idea. So when he read the book, he came over to me, he goes, and Kelly was there, and he was admonishing Kelly. He goes, Kelly, you never told me you went through this. He goes, had I known, he goes, because Kelly was acting out, right? So it allowed Kelly's story to be told too, and our whole family. So yeah, which I thought was so healing. And just watching those two talk, man and man, I was like, ooh, okay, this is good. I said, Kelly, see the book?
That's great.
Good. So it helped his foster parent bring closure to, so that was great.
Mary Lou?
Yes, there.
Yeah, did you have a comment?
Just I'm really proud of her, and she has helped me out in my life to realize some of the demons in my closet and how to handle them. And I can't say enough about this girl. I really, really can't. I've known her 45?
Yeah.
46 years?
Yeah.
I don't know how that is because you only look 32.
58. I'm 58 for the record. I have to make peace. I'm just putting my age out there, people. It is what it is.
Over 30.
Thank you, Mary Lou.
Thanks,
Hey,
Mary.
Arlene, you had sent me a beautiful email about how reading the book impacted you. Would you like to share that with us?
I don't have it in front of me, but I knew the Menara family. My sister Karen was friends with Debbie for a while in high school, and Wendy was 5 years younger, and I think I might have seen her once when she was littler. I just don't remember, but the minute I saw that she posted on Facebook that she was going to come to Ironwood and she'd written this book, I just felt like I had to connect with her. And she was as wonderful as I thought she was when I met her in person. And honestly, Wendy, it was just, after I read the story, I just wanted to give you a giant hug. I wished you hadn't left Ironwood, because I felt so bad about what your family went through. And I knew Debbie because she was a year older than me, and she scared the living crap out of me. She was a strong, and Debbie probably can hear that, but I was so glad to see her come and support you at First Friday in Ironwood. And it was so great to see, her support. She's like, this book's awesome. You got to read it. It's so neat that your family connected and now are going to hopefully stay together and
sure.
make you stronger because of it, right?
I was the one who went rogue and pulled back. So yeah, I finally.
Gloria.
Yeah.
Yes.
Gloria is raising her hand there. I didn't want you to think I was forgetting you.
I wanted to make a comment. I really enjoyed the book. I could really relate to it. I have been trying to write my memoirs since the 60s. And
it's time, girl.
Oh, girl, I could really, I thought, my God, was she reading some of my mail? It's total. My mother wasn't sick, but yet she was. She was an alcoholic, and so that situation I could relate to, where we end up being the caregiver, we end up being the mother, and them the daughter. And taking on all that responsibility and feeling responsible
Yes.
was really hard. And
You know that
the
feeling. that-
emotions of resentment and the love, the mixture, you know, and you were talking about it,
Mhm.
someone was talking about it earlier, how could you, you know, distinguish her as a mother that loved you, and how do you feel about her?
Mhm.
Well, I had to go through that too, and the way I was able to, thank God, the acceptance was detaching and looking at her as an individual,
Mhm.
as a person.
Yeah.
Not my mother, but
Yes.
as a person, and where
Yes.
she came from and what she went through, and why she did the things she did was because of who she was,
Yes.
not what I was, not
Exactly.
anything I did.
Yeah.
And
good
I
for
had to
you.
forgive her. I had to forgive her totally and accept her as a human being with the flaws and everything that I ended up with.
Good for you,
know,
Gloria.
as a human
Yeah,
being.
good for you. Wow.
And this, it's a good lesson that I love the fact, the secrets. Oh my gosh. My mother didn't even know what her father's first name was. When I started doing the research, he had gone to prison, and I wrote the prisons and they didn't know who he was. Finally, I found out what his first name was. She didn't even know.
Oh boy.
They never
Okay.
talked. The
Yeah.
families never talked back then.
I know.
And I'm 80 years old. This is back in the 40s,
Yeah.
you know, and so I know all of those, you know, the
You understand it,
handicap
yeah.
of being in a dysfunctional home. And my purpose of wanting to write my memoirs is for young children in dysfunctional families, hoping that they will see that they have choices.
Yes. Amen to that.
Yeah.
Amen.
And I'm glad that you survived all that and made the right choices. And thank you so much for sharing that personal, deep secrets of just, this is life. This is life. And thank you.
Thank you,
I
Gloria.
really enjoyed the book.
I appreciate that.
Thank you, Gloria. We are just at the top of the hour, so we're going to take a few more minutes here because this could go on for a long time.
Debbie
I
made a
tried to
comment.
convince Wendy
Debbie had
that
a question?
I tried to convince Wendy that I wanted to do a second hour in the future because there's so much to unpack here, but we'll keep working on her. I'm
My
sorry. did you have a
introvert
question?
self says, this is good, folks.
Yeah.
Do it.
Do
Do
it.
it.
Debbie, you had a
Do
question?
it.
Yes,
Debbie?
hi. I've known Wendy since you were 18, I think,
Yeah.
and knew a little bit about her story. I didn't know hardly any of her story until I read her book, and I was like, oh my God. But my question really isn't for you, Wendy. My question is for any of your siblings, or if you know this answer. And it's from the perspective of how you opened up, where you were starting to open up these old stories, so all these memories are coming up. So I know you knew how to process as you were going through it. So my questions for your siblings is, once they knew you were writing the book, how was that reaction for them? Or did they even know you were writing the book before when you were going through the process? How did they process what the memories were coming up? Like, how was that for them reading this story? Because they weren't processing it as you were when you were writing it. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense.
So
Yeah, that's good. Great.
who
Thank you.
helped them?
Well, I think we all have our ways. Like for me, like I mentioned earlier, my quick stories I pulled away from everyone. They just kept, well, anyway, so that was my process and a lot of therapy and everything. So the book allowed me to dig deep. And then when I told them, I said, I'm writing this book. Debbie said, maybe we can change your last name. I said, oh, how did? And I said, well, Deb, I'm not married. That is my last name. She was, oh, okay. Well, that's not going to work. And then she made peace with that. I sent all my siblings. I said, I'm writing this. I can change your name if you want. They all agreed. No, it was fine. They liked the book. Kelly was interesting because I was worried for Kelly because, he went through so much abuse. And for him, it brought up some stuff. And he had texted me and shared some, moments. So you could tell he's still processing stuff. The guy's doing fabulous in his life, but they were all supportive. I wanted them to sign off. I would have easily changed their names. I think Kelly it brought Debbie and I texted a lot. We're going back and forth a lot. And was great. We just kind of, things would come up, and Kelly too, we text. And again, Louis keeps it closer to the vest. Same with Jeff. But the three of us, Kelly, Debbie, and I we kept texting, and stuff like that. So I think they had their own way of processing. They are in relationships. I assume they talk with their significant other. I just had me, my dog, my editor, and some close friends who helped me. I gotta talk to you.
It was amazing. And the way you wrote the story, I mean, I did not know any of you, but I just felt like I was part of the family afterwards. And it's like, I want to know what happened to each one of your siblings and where they are now. So I just feel like I'm hugging your whole family. So
thank you. They're all doing good. They're good. It was so nice, like I said, reconnecting with them. And my brother Louis, just, I don't know, like I said, I think I just idolized him for some reason. I looked up, and when I saw him in Ironwood recently, he did tell me, he said, Wendy, I made this trip to see you, and I didn't want to leave this planet without seeing you again. And I just broke down and cried. I said, and so lots of love. My family's doing good. They're all doing great. Yeah. And Kelly made a surprise visit from Texas. I'm like, oh my God, Kelly. So it was fun. It was good.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, we want another hour. So I'm Wendy, just my own story with Wendy. Wendy lives in my community. We live in the same development area, and she reached out to me because I was doing some sort of event, and she connected with me and wanted to tell me about her book. And I looked at that and I said, hey, you're here in Leisure Town and you have this book, let's talk. So as we have time, we've been spending time together, having many conversations. I read the book, obviously, and made many notes. And it's very powerful. I'm so happy to call Wendy my new friend and my neighbor, and just help her to get her story out as much as possible, and encourage her to continue to tell her story in as many ways as she can. For those of you who are interested in picking up a copy of Silence of Shame, I believe in the Facebook events page, there is a link to her website, and there's a link to where you can pick up a copy of the book.
Thank you.
And it just is, it's inspiring in so many ways. It's sad. It's a little dark. But hopefully, having seen this event this evening, you can kind of see, how important it is. Oh, thank you for sharing that, Debbie. Yeah, you can kind of see how important it is to have these discussions and tell the story. I'm going to just leave with a quote that Wendy has in her book, her own quote, and it's about storytelling, the power of storytelling. And for those of you that are considering writing a short story, a blog, anything, I would encourage you to really look at that. You don't have to be an Ernest Hemingway or a Jane Austen. You just take your words and dump them onto paper and figure out the rest later. But this is Wendy's quote. Leave the memory on the page for those who shall come after. Words set ablaze the darkness, illuminating the road ahead. And that could not be more perfect. So thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you, everyone.
Fantastic. Everyone. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you. All right.
Love
Have
you,
a nice
Wendy.
evening and a wonderful holiday.
Thanks, everyone. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.